Okay, I hope I'm audible to all students who are attending this lecture of public economics. Okay, we continue with our lectures on theories of the public sector. We continue with our lectures on theories of the public sector. And the book I prefer to follow for my lectures on theories of public sector, this is John Hendricks and Gareth Miles. John Hendricks and Gareth Myers. Okay, so let's continue with our discussion regarding theories of the public sector. If all students can recall that in the previous lecture, we had looked at the justification for having the public sector. What are the reasons for having the public sector in the economy? We had looked at the efficiency argument versus the equity argument. And we had seen that if you meet the efficiency argument, the public sector has to compromise on the equity argument. On the other hand, if the focus is laid on the equity argument, then the compromise has to be made on part of the efficiency argument. Okay, we had looked at the minimal state argument, we had looked at market versus government in the previous lecture. Okay, now in this particular lecture, we intend to look at some models in the public sector. Okay, so let's look at the public sector growth. Let's look at this topic in this particular lecture. And within this, we look at a few models where the first model all students can see on their screen, developmental models. Okay, so the basis of development models of the public sector growth is that the economy experiences changes in its structure and needs as it develops. So basically, this model is going to show how public sector is required, the contribution of the public sector is required for development, because every economy has different phases of development. And in different phases of development, the economy is going to require the imperative role played by the public sector. Okay, so let's look at the first stage or the early stage. The early stage of development is viewed as the period of industrialization, during which the population moves from the countryside to the urban areas. All of us know the initial stage of development is the period of industrialization, where you will see migration happening from the rural to the urban areas. Thus, there is a requirement for significant infrastructural expenditure in the development of cities. The typically rapid growth experience in this stage of development results in a significant increase in expenditure and dominant role of infrastructure, which determines the nature of expenditure. Okay, so the first paragraph is telling us that in the initial phase, because of industrialization, which leads to a rapid migration from the rural to the urban areas, requires the need of expenditure, especially expenditure on infrastructure. Okay, so we require the contribution of the public sector. Okay, the second point, in the middle stages of development, the infrastructural expenditure of the public sector becomes increasingly complementary with the expenditure from the private sector. So the initial stage requires heavy expenditure by the public sector, but in the second stage, when you are in the middle stages of development, then the infrastructural expenditure made by the public sector is going to complement along with the role played by the private sector also. For example, developments by private sectors such as factory construction are supported by investments from the public sector such as building of connecting roads. As urbanization proceeds and cities increase in size, so does the population density. All of us know when the population becomes heavily dense, it leads to problems of externalities such as pollution and crime. Thus, an increasing proportion of public expenditure is then diverted away from infrastructure to the control of these externalities. So if I sum up the whole second paragraph, the second paragraph is telling us that when you are in the middle stages of your development, infrastructural expenditure by the public sector now becomes complemented or supported by expenditure from the private sector. For example, when the private sector makes investments in constructing factories, public sector makes investments in making sure that there are good connecting roads. And as urbanization further proceeds and the population becomes more and more dense, the role of the public sector will be diverted away from infrastructure, which will be taken care of by the private sector, towards controlling externalities, because we know that when the population becomes more dense, it leads to more pollution, be it noise pollution, air pollution, water pollution. It leads to also crimes, thefts. So then you need the public sector to make sure that these externalities are controlled. The private sector will then play an important role in hardcore investments in infrastructure. But the public sector's role will now shift away from infrastructure towards controlling these externalities as a result of heavily dense population. Okay, so this was the second point. We now move to the third point. In the developed phase of the economy, now when the economy is fully developed, expenditure is driven by the desire to react to issues of equity. Now, once the economy is developed, the public sector has to make sure that expenditure is done in such a way so that everyone in the economy is reaping the benefits, not only a handful of people. So this results in transfer payments such as social security, health and education becoming the main items of expenditure. So in order to make sure that equity is achieved in the economy once it's developed, the public sector will have to now do expenditure on the basis of transfer payments, expenditure on health and education. Okay, so all students can see, if I sum up, the whole developmental model is telling us what? The whole developmental model is telling us that in the economy, there are 3 phases. And you will see that in every phase, there is a category through which the public sector makes its expenditure. If I talk about the early stage of development, which is called the period of industrialization, which experiences rapid migration from the rural to the urban areas, in this particular stage, we require the public sector to spend on infrastructure. You require heavy contribution by the public sector on infrastructure so that there is rapid growth. When you are in the second stage of development or in the middle stage of development, then infrastructural expenditure by the public sector will be complemented or supported by the expenditure made by the private sector. And as the population grows, it becomes more dense. The expenditure by the public sector is going to shift away from infrastructure towards controlling certain externalities which arise as a result of heavily dense the population which is heavily dense. Okay, so when the population density basically is going to increase, that is going to create more externalities, and more externalities would then require the role of the public sector. And the third stage of development is that stage of development when the economy is in the developed phase. Now you require expenditure of the public sector to shift towards those particular areas which fulfill the requirement of equity. For example, making transfer payments, social security payments, spending on health and education, to make sure that the benefits of a developed economy are reaped by all the people, not a handful of people. So this was the developmental model, which was explaining us how different stages of development in the economy require different types of expenditures made by the public sector. Or I can put it in a better way, expenditures made by the public sector in different areas. Okay, then we move to the second model. This is very important, called the Wagner's law. Okay, so let's look at the Wagner's law. Adolf Wagner analyzed the data on public sector expenditure for several European countries like Japan and US. So several European countries were there, Japan, US, these three economies. These data revealed that the share of public sector in GDP had been increasing over time. So when Wagner did an empirical test by taking into account European economies, US and Japan, it was empirically observed that the share of public sector in GDP in these economies has been increasing over time. So the basis for Wagner's theory consists of three distinct components. The first component, it was observed that the growth of economy results in an increase in complexity. Obviously, when economies grow, systems become more complex. So economic growth requires continual introduction of new laws and development of legal structures. Law and order imply increase in public sector expenditure. Okay, so Wagner observed that when the economy grows, it also becomes more complex. Laws become more, you need more laws and regulations. Because as the economy grows, the transactions and the markets grow. When the markets grow and transactions grow, the legality or the legal contracts to support and to make sure that these markets are functioning efficiently, these law and orders are also going to grow. That means the public sector, as the economy grows, has now to spend more on law and order. So this is the first argument which supports that as the economy grows, the share of public sector expenditure in GDP also grows. Okay. The second point, there was the process of urbanization and the increased externalities associated with this. We have done this in the developmental model also. We have just done this in the development model also. We have seen that as urbanization happens, as migration happens from rural to the urban areas in search for work, the population becomes heavily dense in the urban areas, which in turn causes increase in externalities, which requires heavy expenditure by the public sector. The third important point, Wagner argued that the goods supplied by the public sector have high income elasticity of demand. Now, all students should be able to know the concept of income elasticity of demand from my lectures on introductory and intermediate microeconomics. Income elasticity of demand is going to capture the percentage change in demand for a given percentage change in income. Okay, if I quickly write the formula, income elasticity of demand. Income elasticity of demand is equal to percentage change in quantity demanded upon percentage change in income. Okay, so this is the formula. And if you look at it mathematically, suppose I denote the quantity by Q. So it's change in Q by change in Y times Y by, where Q denotes the quantity demanded and Y denotes my income. Okay, so Wagner argued that those goods which are supplied by the public sector have high income elasticity of demand. That means when your income goes up, your demand goes up by an even larger amount. So this claim appears reasonable for education, recreation, healthcare. Obviously, when your income goes up, demand for these go up by a very high magnitude because these are essential commodities, education, especially education and healthcare. Given this fact, as economic growth raises the income, when economic growth happens, income goes up, and income goes up, there will be an increase in demand for these products. Education, recreation, healthcare. Okay. In fact, from a high elasticity, it can be inferred that public sector expenditure does rise as a proportion of income. Obviously, guys, when the demand for these products is going to go up, expenditure by the public sector is also going to go up. As the economy grows, people's income go up, they start demanding more education, more healthcare, more recreation. As a result, the public sector will need to do more expenditure in these areas. So we can say that public sector expenditure also rises as a proportion of income. This conclusion is the main substance of the Wagner's law. So if I sum up the Wagner's law, Okay, so what is Wagner's law telling us? Wagner empirically observed for the European economies, Japan and US, that the share of the public sector in GDP has been increasing over time, and he gives three reasons for this. The first reason is that as the economies grow, transactions become more complex. The economy becomes more complex. In order to make sure that in the growing economy, markets are functioning efficiently, you require well-defined legal contracts. You need to have a well-defined law and order in the economy as it grows. So that requires increasing expenditure by the public sector on law and order. The second reason Wagner gives is that urbanization happens as the economy grows. People shift from rural to urban areas. As the population in the urban areas becomes heavily dense, it leads to externalities like pollution, like crimes, which require again heavy expenditure to be made by the public sector. And the third reason he gives is that the goods which are produced by the public sector have high income elasticity of demand. That means when your income goes up, you start demanding more of the goods produced by the public sector. Especially when your income goes up, your demand for acquiring better education, quality education, recreation, okay, healthcare, all these demand for all these commodities go up as your income goes up. As a result, it requires more expenditure by the public sector in areas of education, recreation, and healthcare as the economy grows. So all these three reasons are telling us how the share of public sector expenditure in GDP grows up as the economy grows. And Wagner explains this empirically by taking the data from the US economy, Japanese economy, and the European economies. So this was the very famous Wagner's law in public economics, but there is a limitation. This law concentrates solely on demand for public sector services. It does not focus on the supply side. Wagner's law is purely based on the demand side for public sector services. It does not focus on the constraints which the public sector faces in supply. Okay, so that was the Wagner's law for all students. Then we look at the Baumol's law. Again, very important. So let us see what does Baumol's law state now. So Baumol's law starts from an observation about the nature of production technology in the public sector. So he is going to explain the type of production technology which is used in the public sector. The basic hypothesis is that the technology of the public sector is more labor intensive. Now, all of us know labor intensive technology is that technology which requires heavy use of labor with relatively less use of capital. Okay, so the basic hypothesis made by Baumol is that the technology which is used in the public sector is more labor intensive relative to that of the private sector. The private sector focuses more on capital intensive techniques. Okay, as compared to the public sector. Okay, so in addition, the type of production undertaken leaves little scope for increase in productivity, and that makes it difficult to substitute capital for labor. Now, since the public sector is more labor intensive, and obviously when you compare labor with capital, capital after all is all machines, they never get tired. But when you're using a labor intensive technology which requires heavy use of labor, all of us in microeconomics have done diminishing marginal product of labor. On the same capital, if you keep on hiring more labor, the marginal productivity keeps on diminishing over time. That simply means that since the public sector relies heavily on labor as compared to the private sector, okay, there is a little scope for productivity to improve in the public sector. And this makes it further difficult to substitute capital for labor. Okay, competition on the labor market ensures that labor costs in the public sector are linked to those in the private sector. Now, in the private sector, it is possible to substitute capital for labor when the relative cost of labor increases. Obviously, when demand for labor increases, wages are going to rise. When wages are going to rise, it is easy for the private sector to substitute labor for capital. Or let me say it in a better way, when demand for labor goes up, wages go up. When wages go up, the private sector can now bargain or can even fire workers. But the public sector can't do that. So furthermore, technological advances in the private sector lead to increase in productivity. These increases in productivity cause the returns to labor rising. Okay, so in the private sector, you have technological advancements, you have technological upgradations in the private sector. This in turn causes the value of marginal productivity of labor to rise. In microeconomics, all of us have done this concept. Value of marginal productivity of labor is nothing but price multiplied price of the output. Price of the output, this is P, is nothing but the price of the output, final output, multiplied by marginal productivity of labor. Obviously, when capital goes up, VMPL or value of marginal productivity of labor also goes up. When capital becomes more upgraded, which happens in the private sector, it causes VMPL to rise. Okay, thus we observe that in the private sector, wage rate equals the marginal revenue product. What is marginal revenue product, guys? Marginal revenue product of labor is nothing but marginal revenue multiplied by marginal product of labor. Again, we have done this concept in our lectures in introductory and intermediate microeconomics. Marginal revenue product of labor is marginal revenue multiplied by marginal product of labor. And all of us know in perfect competition, P is equal to MR. So we know this, under perfect competition, P is equal to MR. Therefore, value of marginal product of labor is equal to marginal revenue product of labor under perfect competition. Okay, so, but since the public sector cannot substitute capital for labor, okay, the wage increase in the private sector feeds through into cost increase in the public sector. Obviously, when the private sector is paying higher wages, the public sector also will have to pay higher wages. Otherwise, all the labor is going to leave the public sector. I hope students are able to understand this catch. The catch here is private sector can easily substitute capital for labor. Public sector cannot easily substitute capital for labor. Why? Because public sector is more labor intensive. Private sector is more capital intensive. So private sector can easily fire labor and hire more capital, but the public sector can't do that. Now, in the private sector, when technological advancements happen, returns to labor start rising. So in the private sector, wages start going up, but the public sector cannot substitute capital for labor. So when wages in the private sector go up, public sector will also have to increase the wages. Otherwise, everyone will start leaving the public sector and move to the private sector. So maintaining a constant level of public sector output must therefore result in an increase in public sector expenditure. Obviously, the public sector will now have to pay higher wages to the workers. Otherwise, they are going to leave the private sector now. So thus, if the public sector output or the private sector output remains in the same proportion, the public sector expenditure rises as a proportion of the total expenditure. Because the public sector will now have to pay more wages to make sure that the workers are staying with them and not going to the private sector. So this is the Baumol's law, which asserts the increasing proportional size of the public sector. So if I quickly sum up the Baumol's law on the whiteboard, let me come to the whiteboard. Let me explain Baumol's law in more depth. This makes it crystal clear. So if you look at the public sector versus the private sector, so the public sector is relatively more labor intensive. The public sector is relatively more labor intensive. The private sector is relatively more capital intensive. Okay, so in the public sector, what happens? Okay, In the public sector, it is difficult to substitute capital for labor. Difficult to substitute capital for labor. That means in the public sector, since the public sector relies heavily on labor, it is difficult for the public sector to fire labor and hire more capital. On the other hand, in the private sector, which is relatively less labor intensive or more capital intensive, it is easy to substitute capital for labor. Okay, when you are in the private sector, it is easy to fire labor and hire more capital in the private sector. So what happens now? So I can say, therefore, when technology is upgraded, in the private sector, it implies value of the marginal productivity of labor goes up, which implies wages in the private sector go up. Since the public sector cannot easily substitute, capital for labor, therefore, the public sector will also have to increase the wages to make sure that the workers do not leave, because if the public sector does not pay them higher wages, the workers are going to move to the private sector. The workers are going to move to the private sector if the public sector does not pay them higher wages. So I can write that, therefore, this requires increasing expenditure made by the public sector. This requires increasing expenditure made by the public sector. This is all what the Baumol's law is telling us. Okay, so that means if the public sector and the private sector output are in the same proportion, then the public sector expenditure is going to rise relatively as compared to the private sector. So if I come back to the lecture note, okay, all students can see that this was a very important line. If the public sector or the private sector output, if they remain in the same proportion, the public sector expenditure rises as a proportion of the total expenditure. Because in order to make sure that the workers stay with the public sector, they will have to pay them higher wages when the wages in the private sector also go up. As a result, the share of the public sector expenditure and the total expenditure is going to rise. This is the Baumol's law. Again, what's the limitation of the Baumol's law? Let's quickly look at the limitation. Okay, so it is entirely technological driven and does not consider the aspects of supply and demand or the political processes. Obviously, if you look at the Baumol's law and the explanation we have looked at, it is more of technological driven. That when the technology improves in the private sector, wages go up in the private sector. As a result, the public sector will also have to offer higher wages to retain its workers. It's purely technological driven. We have not talked about supply and demand or the political process behind this. Second reason is that there are also reasons for believing that substitution can take place in the public sector. Not all the public sector companies find it difficult to substitute capital for labor. For some of them, it is easy to substitute capital for labor. In the analysis which Baumol has made, there's an implicit assumption that all the public sector companies find it difficult to substitute capital for labor, but that's not the truth. In reality, you have a lot of public sector companies for which it is easy to fire workers and hire capital. Third reason, there is also an evidence of a steady decline in the public sector wages relative to those in the private sector. This reflects lower skilled labor being substituted for more skilled labor. Obviously, we have not looked at the fact that in the public sector, when wages in the private sector go up because of technological advancements, the public sector can fire skilled and hire semi-skilled or low-skilled workers and pay them lower wages. This is also a possibility. Okay. If the private sector, because of technological advancements, has increased the wages, the public sector can fire the skilled workers because the skilled workers anyways are going to go to the private sector. The skilled workers are anyways going to go to the private sector, which is offering them higher wages because of technological advancements. And instead of hiring skilled workers, the public sector can hire semi-skilled or low-skilled workers and offer them lower wages. So that is also a limitation of the Baumol's law. If the public sector can do that, if the public sector can fire, if the public sector can substitute skilled workers, or I can say if the public sector can substitute unskilled workers for skilled workers, then in that particular case, the Baumol's law is not going to hold any water. Okay, so these are the three limitations of the Baumol's law. First limitation, it does not take into account demand, supply, and political process. It's purely technological driven. Second point, there is no reason to believe that all the public sector companies find it difficult to substitute capital for labor. For some of them, it is very easy to substitute capital for labor. And the third limitation is that the Baumol's law also does not take into account the fact that it is perfectly possible for the public sector to substitute low skilled workers in place of skilled workers, which in turn is going to cause a steady decline in wages in the public sector as compared to the private sector. So students, this is where I intend to stop in this particular lecture. The objective of this lecture was to discuss with all students three models. One was the developmental model. So in this lecture, we have covered the development model. We have covered the Wagner's law along with its limitations, and we have covered the Baumol's law along with its limitations. Now, in the next lecture, we are going to look at mathematical model. So in the next lecture, we are going to look at the political model, which is going to use some optimization to explain the size of the public sector. So we shall be covering this up in the next lecture of public economics. So I hope all students have enjoyed this lecture. Any doubt, you can unmute your mic and ask, or call up or mail me your doubts at divineschoolofeconomics@gmail.com. So this is where I stop in this lecture.